With the Confederates holding solid defensive positions on top of Turner's Gap, the two Iron Brigades decided on two coordinated attacks on the Gap. Leading the Eastern Iron Brigade were the green coats of Colonel Henry A.V. Post, Second United States Sharpshooters, who charged up the hill, jumping from one rock to another while unleashing devastating fire into the Confederate ranks as they advanced. With little support and a massive human wave coming up, the Confederates were forced to cede the hill to the Sharpshooters. The Second United States Sharpshooters, also known as Berdan Sharpshooters, were one of the two regiments organized solely to be crack shots in the Union Army. This came to fruition when the country's leading marksman, Hiram Berdan, proposed forming a unique regiment that was made up of the country's best marksmen after the first shots of the Civil War were fired at Fort Sumter. Due to Berdan's political connections, his plan was quickly approved by the War Department. Come July of 1861, Berdan would be appointed the colonel of the 1st Regiment of the United States Sharpshooters. Unlike the normal regiments who would accept anybody into their ranks, Berdan had requirements for recruits to fulfill when they could join his ranks. The requirements were no man would be enlisted who could not put 10 bullets in succession within 5 inches from the center at a distance of 600 feet from a rest or 300 feet offhand. A potential recruit was required to fire his own open-sight rifle, fire 10 consecutive rounds, reloading as fast as possible at 2 targets. The first target was 200 yards away and fired at using a rest. The other target was placed at 100 yards and fired offhand. A contestant missing the targets or averaging more than 5 inches from the center was disqualified. The 1st and 2nd Sharpshooters were designated as a brigade but seldom could be employed as such, being constantly scattered as detached companies and used for skirmishing, picket duty, or even sharpshooting details and reconnaissance, much to Colonel Berdan's disappointment. They were often called upon to act as individuals who, equipped with rations, water, and ammunition, sallied forth in the morning to the front line, were hidden by terrain, foliage, and trees, where they looked for worthwhile targets such as enemy sharpshooters, officers, and artillerymen, often climbing trees to observe and spot targets for sharpshooting. This was demanding work, as it involved constant contact with the enemy, and losses were therefore continual. However, the usual trickle of recruits were all willing volunteers and were soon absorbed as good soldiers. The 2nd was formed after the 1st was fully mustered. Each company of the 2nd came from a particular state, with A Company coming from Minnesota, B from Michigan, C from Pennsylvania, D from Maine, E and H from Vermont, and F and G from New Hampshire. Henry Albertson von Post was mustered into the U.S. Army as a lieutenant colonel of the 2nd United States Sharpshooter Regiment, and on January 1, 1862, was named colonel of the regiment. The regiment was first deployed to Washington for duty in defense of the city late in 1861. In early 1862, they marched south in support of McClellan in his advance toward Richmond as part of the Peninsula Campaign, where they fought many battles and instantly proved their unique effectiveness. They also operated against General Thomas Stonewall Jackson during his Valley Campaign without much action. Come August of 1862, they joined in General John Pope in his Northern Virginia campaign. At Second Manassas, they were hotly engaged with Hood's Texans in the town of Groton before pulling back for the night on August 29th. They would not be engaged again until the Union Army, now led by General George McClellan, ventured west into Maryland that September in pursuit of General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia. During the Maryland campaign, the 2nd United States Sharpshooters were led by Colonel Henry A.V. Post, who was attached to John P. Hatch's famous Eastern Iron Brigade of Abner Doubleday's 1st Division in Hooker's 1st Corps. The 2nd led the attack up South Mountain to take Turner's Gap, which was defended by Confederates on the east side of the National Road. They held the right flank and moved independently in an effort to flank the Confederates, bouncing from one rock outcropping to the other, picking off D.R. Jones' Virginians, while the rest of the brigade followed closely behind. The 2nd was the 1st regiment to carry the crest of the mountain and capture several rebels and howitzers in the process. After a short rest for refitting and rations, they advanced with the rest of the army to Sharpsburg, posting north of the Dunker Church with General Joseph Hooker's 1st Corps. On September 17th, they were welcomed by artillery fire and detached to support Gibbon's Western Iron Brigade alongside the 2nd and 6th Wisconsin Regiments, where they formed up in a line of battle for the first time in a mode of fighting not suited to their style. Here they advanced bravely forward, both dealing and sustaining horrendous casualties. They inflicted considerable damage on Stonewall Jackson's troops before finally being pushed back by Hood's Texans. The regiment lost 43% of their total strength at the Battle of Antietam, and their leader, Colonel Post, fell wounded but later recovered. Due to the 2nd being sharpshooters, they were issued the M1859 Sharps rifle, which possessed incredible accuracy and reloading rate. Compared to the standard musket at the time, which can be reloaded in 20 seconds, this rifle can be reloaded in a mere 9 seconds due to its breech loading ability, making it a perfect gun for reloading while standing up, kneeling, or lying down. Compared to the average regiment in the service of the Union, the 2nd was only one of 2 regiments issued green uniforms to help in their sharpshooting roles. They were issued dark forest green, forage caps, coats, trousers, and brown leather gaiters for their standard uniform, which made them prime targets if the Confederates could spot them. But soon after, due to being prime targets and the nature of war and lack of quick resupplying, their uniforms became a mixture of both their issued green and some standard blue uniforms. Their uniform was rounded out by non-reflective black rubber buttons and accoutrements to help them blend in. As for their flag, the 2nd carries into battle their own United States guidon, which is different from the standard flag, that has 2 points on the ends with a middle triangle cut out. In War of Rights, you can currently find the 2nd on Hatch's attack on South Mountain, where they team up with the 23rd New York Infantry to lead the attack toward the top of Turner's Gap. It is argued by many modern historians that the 1st and 2nd U.S. sharpshooters inflicted more casualties than any other Union regiment of the war. This leaves you with a choice: join the ranks of this elite unit or encounter their rapid movements, unique fighting style, and deadly marksmanship on the field of battle.